Hi, and welcome to The Pollsters. I'm Margie Omero, Democratic pollster with PSB Research.
And I'm Kristen Soltis-Anderson, Republican pollster with Echelon Insights.
And each week we bring you the polls driving the news in politics, tech, and pop culture. So first, a few announcements. So we're going to be on Spotify pretty soon, which is pretty exciting. So welcome new listeners if you came to us through iTunes. You can also find us or other folks through Spotify. They don't have a lot of shows there. You got to really get
they're
lucky.
Pretty picky. I feel like we've just entered some really cool
Hand
club.
curated, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So,
Spotify,
yeah. So all with thanks to our crack production team that we have here that made it happen. Which,
AKA Margie.
So anyway, so this is happening. And then we're going to be doing a Facebook Live, we think, on Monday through ABC. So that's going to happen around midday, 11:30-ish. TBD, but we think that's when it's going to be. So thank you. On the last bit, thank you all for the lovely, nice messages about our website to help crowdsource to make the list of pollsters and polling outlets really exhaustive. We got a lot of great messages. We're going to update it today. The time that I had slated to do that got taken by a false alarm that there was a mouse in the house. It was really a purple pipe cleaner that my cat was playing with. And by the time I woke my husband up to catch and kill the pipe cleaner, my time devoted to the pollster's website was now evaporated. So we'll get to that today. And there's also an email list sign up too. And so we're not quite sure what we're going to be sending emails about, but you're not going to be like roped into our sales funnel and be pitched like webinars or any of that kind of stuff.
Or pitched any of the crazy nonsense that you're not getting pitched.
I know. We've gotten some pitches that would jeopardize our clean rating, I think.
Yeah, we got. I'm trying to think if there's a way to diplomatically explain the pitch we got yesterday.
I don't know. Just like intimate rejuvenation.
Intimate rejuvenation. I was like, that's not.
Have you
topic.
Seen our title?
That's off topic.
Like, you don't even need to listen to our show. So yeah, we've gotten some cuckoo stuff, but and they were insistent. They sent us a couple emails, in fact, but we actually did get a relevant, on point pitch today that we're going to talk about today in a little bit. But first, we're going to have the top lines. What are the top lines, Kristen?
He said, shut up. The first debate is in the books. We'll discuss whether or not that snap polling is legit. Can you trust it or not? And then pre-debate, we have had a huge polling dump that showed the race pretty close. What to look for in the coming week. Then we are not throwing away our shot. We have uncovered some fun crosstabs in some polling done by Echelon. We're testing how Hamilton fans feel about 2016. Then, do voters want compromise, or do they want people to stick to principle in the room where it happens? We will talk a little bit about whether voters want people who stand their ground or who work nice with the other team. And then everybody hates the media. And last but not least, I think we're talking about either The Simpsons or grilled cheese. I'm not quite sure what we decided with.
We might have time
stick
for
around
both.
To the end.
We'll figure it out.
Simpsons or grilled cheese is on the menu.
Too late to do a Twitter poll, but I don't know. We'll have to see how that would turn out. So first, our poll of the week, we actually got a pitch that was relevant for once. This was the most relevant one we received, and it was from Nielsen. And, one of the kind of hidden stories or stories that doesn't get covered as much in the campaign is what, not just the advertisements, but what are the kind of buys that the candidates do or that political entities do. It's not simply like you release an ad, and we've talked about this a little bit on the show. Sometimes people release an ad and they just buy like 2 spots just so they can get press coverage that says, Joe Blow released an ad showing X, Y, and Z, even though there's no real, there isn't a lot of money behind it. Not a lot of people will see it in real life. They'll just see it on the news. But so anyway, Nielsen is trying to release some data about how you could best target voters based on the kind of music that they listen to, the kind of radio stations that they listen to. It's swing states, also based on voters' party. The downside with this, though, is it's kind of a lot of like, I guess this is sort of obvious. Like, Democrats are going to over-index on R&B, reggae, and hip-hop, and Republicans are going to over-index on country and religious radio. I guess this is one of those things you probably didn't need a whole lot of data to figure out if it was true, but it's still, I'm probably a little bit more surprised about independents and others. You could find those folks on classical radio, classic rock, or alternative rock. I guess for millennials and some seniors, maybe that's where you would find them.
Yeah,
Did you find that surprising?
I think the independent one is interesting, although independent is such a wide basket. So, there are demographic factors that are closely aligned with being either Republican or Democrat, right? So if you're white and you live in a rural area in the South, yeah, you're more likely to be Republican. So it totally makes sense that country would be at the top. Or African Americans overwhelmingly tend to be Democratic. So hip hop and R&B, right? You would totally expect that. But I feel like it's less easy to say like this is a demographic group that is always independent. And so I think that's why you have such like a weird mix of classic rock, alternative, what have you.
I know, it's true. And then, what I would love to know, I mean, because obviously, and we saw this when we did the OkCupid study, or we talked about that, where, people who lean Republican would say no rap on their music preferences, and Democrats would have things like rap in addition to crying and yoga and museums. But I would love to know if white Democrats are over-indexed on hip-hop, too, if it's just about the racial composition of Democrats.
That would be very interesting.
That's something I would like. So you could pitch us that story, listening world.
I will say one other thing. So one of Echelon's clients was Pandora, and we did a study for them about what do Republicans listen to and how much do Republican voters engage with a service like Pandora. And one of the questions in our survey was an open end, right? Like, what artists do you listen to? And the coding for that project was amazing because we had to go through and like do you know how many different ways people can spell Led Zeppelin? Countless combinations of consonants and vowels can wind up being in the neighborhood of Led Zeppelin. So like that coding project, I mean, that was one where our company's a small company. We pretty much just split the sample up by like everybody on staff gets 200 responses. You got to clean up the spelling. And
that's great.
Yeah. So it was fun.
That's funny. Okay. So we'll link to that. As we always do, we link to all the stuff in our show notes. So we will link to that plus all the other stuff that we're going to talk about. But let's move to the big news, obviously, which is the debate and all the post-debate brouhaha and polling. There was a lot of stuff going on. There were a couple focus groups going on the night of the debate. So the Washington Post did what they called an informal focus group of undecided folks in North Carolina who they said they reported gasped when they heard Trump say that he didn't pay taxes that would make him smart. You had Frank Luntz do a focus group in Philadelphia. As far as we know, Michael Willie or no other man or woman snuck into the Frank.
As far as we know.
As far as we know. I know. It'd be hard to get that news out in a busy week like this, but frankly. But folks go back. There was a person who, like, I guess you could call him a mole, who snuck into a Frank Luntz focus group and then made a lot of news about it. And that was one of the most clicked things we've ever had on our Facebook page, which I find kind of funny. But no, I don't think anybody snuck into a focus group, at least into that one. And then there was overnight polling done by some outlets, and then some polling the subsequent nights. Some of them were of voters, some of them were of people who watched the debate. But they all kind of told pretty much the same story, which is that Clinton won. It doesn't really matter which poll you looked at, even including the Echelon poll that Kristen, your firm, did. But there wasn't really any poll that we saw that was an actual poll done with something resembling a representative sample that showed that Trump won. All of them showed that Clinton won.
Right. And there was a big graphic that was getting circulated around the night of the debate, later on that night, I think early the next morning, by Trump folks, which was a screen grab of
Clinton with a microphone and earpiece behind her. That one.
Oh no, not the InfoWars thing. No, it was a screen grab of all of the like Drudge poll shows Trump won, Patch.com poll shows Trump won. All of these like opt-in. Or not even I don't even think opt-in is the right word. Just these like, as you're passing across a website, it's like, click here to tell us who you think won.
Right, where you can refresh and vote a billion times.
Yeah, clear your cookies, vote again if you want, which is not how true online survey research works. But so you had, there are, Trump fans that were sort of circulating this graphic to say, no. All these biased mainstream media polls, they're showing Clinton winning, but the true polls with millions of votes are showing Trump won. And so I had a lot of people tweet at me, can you trust online polls? And I always wanted to be like, let us not lump all surveys on the internet into the same bucket. There is a big difference between a survey you do via the internet, but of a sample of people. You are choosing, you are allowed to take my poll, you are not allowed to take my poll. Not everybody can just show up at Drudge and click. Versus, I guess, a poll on a website, but that anybody can take. They are, just because they are both on the internet and they both look like they provide statistics that seem the same, they are not the same thing.
Right. I mean, people argue effectively that there may be a self-selecting bias to the legit post-debate polls, because people who thought that Clinton did a better job may be more likely to take the survey, or people are getting influenced by each other rather than by their, studious watching of the debate, or whatever, right? I mean, those are legitimate questions to have. Then also the question is, does it even matter who people thought won the debate anyway? I mean, what we saw in the primaries when the Clinton-Sanders debate, Sanders won by a variety of other dimensions that were not who won the debate. That Clinton could be seen as having won the debate, but if more people gave money or started following Sanders as a result of the debate, that's an advantage for him too, because he was unknown. It was a different kind of situation, right? So you could have all those discussions about the post-debate polling for this debate, but what you can't say is that, some people have said, is that these online, refresh whatever polls, you can't say that those are somehow the same as legit CNN polls, NBC SurveyMonkey polls done with a representative sample where, they're trying to get the right number of people and not anybody can just show up. They're not the same. They're obviously not the same. And to call them, one, the results should be taken the same way. Also to call them all online polls or post-debate polls or snap polls to kind of give them all some kind of overly broad, unspecific label does everybody a disservice, because now nobody knows what anybody's talking about when they're saying, well, I don't trust online polls or I don't trust post-debate polls. What are they referring to? Nobody even knows anymore. Immediately became this big whole mess because you had a lot of Trump supporters really being even Kellyanne Conway, who did a great job as a guest co-host of the pollsters over a year ago. She also said Trump was leading in the polls, but deleted that tweet. So people flagged that for us.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, there's not only a difference, by the way, between snap garbage poll with no sampling protocol and a legitimate poll with some kind of sampling protocol. But the other thing you have to keep in mind is, so the CNN poll, for instance, I think it came out that night, an hour after the debate was over. They were like, our CNN poll shows Clinton won 62-27. Let's talk about it. And I really wonder, who is taking a poll at 11 o'clock at night?
Yeah, I sure wouldn't have.
Who are these people? Now, of course, CNN's number has been backed up by other numbers. So CNN found 62% saying Clinton won. My own firm's poll found 58% of people said that. Our poll, our fielding window was a little longer. You don't want a fielding window to be too long, because then, as you mentioned, people may not have even watched the debate, but they're like, oh yeah, I totally watched the debate. Clinton totally won, even if they didn't watch it. They just saw it on the news and they're saying what they saw. But the consistency, the YouGov, the NBC
Rest
SurveyMonkey,
assured, though,
the Politico,
Clinton won the
Morning
debate.
Consult. Yeah, every single one of these polls, with I think the exception of PPP, which showed a little more favorable to Trump, because hey, when you call people on landline phones, guess who you're talking to? But I digress. There's consistency there. It's not just that CNN was some weird outlier. So I think it is, you can say, yeah, Clinton probably won the debate. But the only metric that matters is, are you winning or losing the election?
Right.
And so if you, quote unquote, won the debate, but the polls don't move, if a tree falls in a forest and no one's there to hear it, if you win a debate and nobody's opinion moves, did you really win? What will matter more is whether or not the ballot shifts. And here I think we have a little bit of indication that the ballot may be shifting slightly more back to Clinton. I think our Echelon poll found Clinton up by about 5, depending on whether you looked at our registered voters or likely voters.
The Huffington Post average is 47.5 Clinton, 43 Trump.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit of an inching up, but it's nothing really.
Yeah.
But they've designed their thing to not be that sensitive.
Not be as wobbly.
Right.
And so we won't really know. This is what the debate was on Monday. We're taping this Thursday morning. I wouldn't be surprised if sometime today, this afternoon, as soon as we push this show out, a whole bunch of new polls hit.
Right.
that are trying to figure out what happened before and after.
Because they'll want to inform Sunday. So maybe they'll come out, if not today, then they'll come out tomorrow in order to make sure their poll.
Yeah. And speaking of Sunday, there's a chance you'll see Margie and I on television on Sunday.
Yeah, we're working out some details.
Stay tuned.
It's a little TBD. We'll push it out. Sometimes these things get canceled or
who knows?
Messed up by me.
Stay tuned. Stay tuned. But I was kind of laughing because Monday morning before the debate, it felt like every pollster in America was just dumping poll results. Like, oh, we've got Clinton only up by 2 in Colorado, or we've got Trump up by 2 in Ohio. And it was this like flurry of madness. But it was like, thanks for spending all that money on these polls that may be completely irrelevant 12 hours from now once this debate ends. Like, I guess it's good. It sets a baseline. So then if there is movement, you can say, okay, before the debate, it was X. Now after the debate, it's Y.
I know.
But there were so many polls most of the polls were pretty good news for Trump, actually, which is
right.
It was showing a lot of tightening in some of these swing states. You had Nate Silver all day on Monday.
He had the Clinton chance of winning under 50, I think, headed into the debate, which was the first time in a while, if not ever.
Yeah.
And everyone started to freak out.
Yeah. So everybody went in freak out mode. Then the debate happened. Now everybody's waiting to see, okay, has Clinton reestablished that 4, 5, 6 point lead?
And people were just shocked, I say, to find out that Trump could not be coherent and sensible and not rude for 90 minutes straight. I don't know why that was so shocking, but yet it was. People were like, oh my God, unbelievable. How did that happen?
Well, I will admit, the first 20 minutes of the debate, I was watching and I was like, oh my God, Trump might win this thing.
He got some hits in, for sure.
When he was like, my people told me I'm supposed to make you happy. I was like, okay, he's clearly been coached to lock it down. Right. But he could not lock it down for 90 minutes.
No, it just burst out of that like King Kong, cannot be contained. I mean, one last point about the overnight polls, because this will happen too when we have more, because we're going to have 2 more presidential debates and a VP debate. I mean, there is an argument. So normally when you do a poll, you want to have a couple nights in the field, not just because it's a break for your interviewers or whatever, but because you want to reach people who are a little bit harder to reach. You don't just want to reach people who are sitting by the phone saying, yep, hello, I'm here. And yeah, I'd love to take a survey, because those people are going to be different than the people who you need to call back at different times, maybe at 5:30 versus 9 o'clock, or schedule an interview or a callback, or talk to their spouse or their kid and say when is a good time to reach them. Those kinds of folks are going to be different than the easy to reach people. So those callbacks, as they're called, are really important. That's why you want a couple nights in the field. That's why those Insta polls, overnight polls, can be a little bit suspicious. On the other hand, when you're talking about a debate, you're talking about, trying to find out what happened that night. And so there is an argument for saying, well, this is the time where you would want to do an Insta poll, because you want to talk to people with their first gut reaction before you then end up being informed by everybody else. Although that stuff, the perception's still reality. If they're getting their news and they think Clinton won just because they saw it on the news, that's still Clinton winning the debate. Yeah. Even if they didn't watch it themselves.
And I think that same thing sort of applies to the focus groups that are so popular, because if you think about it, especially if it's a focus group that's going to be on TV, I mean, there is a subset of people who even do focus groups in the first place, but usually that's fine. That doesn't make focus groups invalid. But then if you're talking about the type of person who's willing to go sit and do a focus group on TV for that long, yikes, and I've done that too. I did some for Fusion back I think a year ago during the second Republican primary debate, where it was me and Alicia Menendez, and we had a whole bunch of millennials in the Los Angeles area sitting around, and man, we subjected them to watching the undercard debate, the regular debate. It was, God, we didn't pay those respondents enough money for the torture that we subjected them to. But they should have been making Corey Lewandowski money. Somebody, oh God, no comment. Somebody who, agrees to do that is going to be a little different than your normal person. And by the way, I mean, remember, in the Republican primary, you would have a huge number of people saying, oh, I think Marco Rubio won that debate. I mean, the Luntz focus groups found Rubio winning every debate. Guess who didn't win the Republican nomination, right? So that's why I say the post-debate polls of who won, who lost, fine. But the real metric is who are you voting for?
Right.
And so if that doesn't move, then did you actually win?
But where respondents are willing to be on a televised focus group, Iowa and New Hampshire, because when we would do focus groups that were going to be televised, not only did we have to screen, you usually want to screen, like, have you been in a focus group recently? And they're like, well, yeah, I kind of do this like every month. You're like, no. But not only did you have a hard time finding people who had not already been in a political focus group, you had a hard time finding people who had not been in a televised focus group in Des Moines and Manchester, because there were so many televised focus groups during the primaries that, like, people were, caucus goers were like, yeah, no, I wanted to be, I was in the CNN one. Can I be in yours also? We're like, no. Sorry, that's not how it works.
It's a fun hobby.
So anyway, so that's what's going on in the presidential race in terms of the debate polling. What else did you find, Kristen? You had something pretty funny in your Echelon poll.
Yeah, so one of the things that we did at Echelon is we were doing a poll as well. It was an online poll using a sort of a credible sample provider. So again, this is not one of those ones that just anybody can click and enter into. You have to be asked. And we surveyed about 1,500 likely voters. We found that overall, again, Clinton was up by 5. But then one of the things that we did with this study was we asked 2 questions at the end, which one was about whether or not you watch Morning Joe. And one question, which was, have you ever seen the musical Hamilton in the theater, listened to the soundtrack, or like, no, you don't know what we're talking about? And we found that among people who watch Morning Joe, Clinton wins 56-36 against Trump. So about a third of people in our poll.
How many people said they watched Morning Joe? A third?
No, I actually don't know what the proportion of our sample was. Like, I don't know how big the N size was. I do know that 6% of our sample said that they had seen Hamilton in the theater, which is just mathematically not correct. Like, 6% of America is just millions upon millions of people. And if you figure, like, okay, how many can watch any given show on any particular night? Like, there's lots of people saying they've watched Hamilton but haven't.
So the free tip, that can be your, like, social, are you lying in your survey question, your test? Like, are you making stuff up? You can just ask, have you seen Hamilton in the theater?
So full disclosure, I'm not 100% confident that everybody's honest about being in our Hamilton subsample. But nonetheless, in our Hamilton, either you saw it in the theater or you've listened to the soundtrack subsample, we had Clinton 61, Trump 28. So a pretty big margin for Clinton among Hamilton supporters.
That's good. I like it.
And I have to just defend my firm very briefly. A man named Sean, who I think is a perfectly fine guy, posted yesterday, well, this is Echelon becoming the PPP of the right, which of course sent me into a minor tailspin because I always call PPP a troll pollster here on this show. So PPP is a firm on the left that does a lot of these robo polls where they call people on the phone, and they are the ones that do polls like, oh, Republicans all want to bomb Agrabah, which is the country from Aladdin, or like, Republicans all want to vote for Harambe, or like, look how stupid those Republicans, so like sometimes they'll do fun stuff that we like chuckle at and we talk about in the show, and other times they do poll questions that are solely intended to make Republicans look dumb/racist, and it makes me really ticked off. So no, asking people if they've watched a musical and then running that as a crosstab because it's funny does not make you a troll pollster. If we were to do a poll where we were like, who would you rather vote for? What's your fave unfave of Aaron Burr? And we were like, oh, look at those stupid Democrats. They love Aaron Burr. Grr. Then that makes you a troll pollster. We are not in the business of troll polling.
Hey, look, I want more funny polls.
Yeah.
I'm in favor of funny polls.
Let's throw this fun thing in at the end and see. So, because
I once got mad at Chris Cillizza on Twitter because he was like, wrote a whole like sneering article about like, why is there a question of like who you vote for, Darth Vader, Jabba the Hutt, or whatever it was. There was some like Star Wars head to head that he found like annoying enough to write a whole article. And I'm like, you're a buzzkill. I was that person. I was like,
fun polls are completely acceptable.
You're a buzzkill. Anyway, so meanwhile, there's a little bit of polling about how can we think about the debate other than just who won or who lost? It's a little bit more context of, what do we learn about the debate itself? And this is actually from PPP. It was on Rachel Maddow last night, exclusive to her, but I think it's being released this morning. Overwhelmingly, I think it was like 2/3 roughly said that they found Trump's criticism of former Miss Universe winner to be inappropriate. And even with Trump supporters, I found this kind of surprising that 45% of Trump supporters found that inappropriate. So this may be one of those moments where Trump, did something that even his defenders are having a hard time defending. And this story doesn't really seem to be going away since the contestant, or the winner rather, has been in the news quite a bit this week. And Trump has obviously continued to talk about it in the way he is known for, I guess, of doubling down on a bad story to make it worse. And then there was also some polling about not just who won, but who prepared enough. Clinton prepared enough. YouGov found 3/4 said that Clinton prepared enough. Only a quarter of voters overall thought Trump prepared enough. Even among Republicans, more Republicans said that Clinton prepared enough than said Trump prepared enough. That was 60 to 46 among Republicans. They could say both prepared enough. So that's why those numbers add up to over 100. And then I think there was one other. So Brendan Nyhan, who has been crushing it lately at the New York Times Upshot. He has something interesting about fact checking, just sort of writ large about fact checking, is another thing that I think a lot of people were talking about going into the debate, how much Lester Holt was going to fact check, what were fact checkers going to do afterwards. And Hillary Clinton, calling for fact checkers to get to work during the debate. And so Brendan Nyhan did some research into fact checking. This was before the debate, and the audience of people who actually like fact checking turns out to skew toward people who are more politically knowledgeable and interested in politics. I guess that's not a surprise, as opposed to the people who maybe need that fact checking because they didn't hear the facts the first time because, they have other jobs. Those folks are a little bit less open to fact checking. So,
well, I have two beefs with fact checking. I mean, in the abstract, the idea of checking to make sure facts are correct is correct. But this now, industry of fact checking, I have two beefs with it. One is, so take, for instance, in the debate where Donald Trump tried to make the case that, murders have gone up in New York. So I'm just following my Twitter feed while the debate is going, and Philip Bump at Washington Post and Wesley Lowery both tweet at the same time a fact check. And Philip Bump says, Trump is right, murders have gone up in New York. It was 532, now it's 569, from 2004 to 2005. And at the same time, next to each other in my Twitter feed, is Wesley Lowery saying, no, Trump is wrong, crime is down in New York from 2014, and linking to something else. So these are two ostensibly, nonpartisan journalists who have both come to the table with data, and they both come to different conclusions. But when you wear the, I'm a fact checker, label, it's I'm giving myself this air of authority that my read on this is right and everybody else is just not paying attention to facts. And even when you're dealing in actual facts, there can be different interpretations of things. And my second beef with the fact checking industry is when people then say, oh, well, 80% of things Trump says are false. And only 20% of things Clinton says is false, because it's a sampling problem then. So we as pollsters know very acutely that, have you fact checked every single sentence that Trump has made and every single sentence that Clinton has made? Because then you can make the statement 20% of things that Clinton says are false versus 80% of things that Trump says are false. But if you're not fact checking every assertion, then your sample is wrong. You can fact check a lot more things that Trump says that are definitely wrong, whereas you as the fact checker can be like, oh, I'm gonna fact check this thing that Hillary Clinton said, and oh, look, it turns out that she's totally correct. And so you as the fact checker have the ability to make a judgment of what your sample even looks like. So I always kind of roll my eye. I mean, I would not be surprised if it is the case that Trump actually says a lot more false things than Hillary Clinton. But when somebody who is supposed to be in the business of fact checking comes to the table with 80% of things Trump says is false versus only 20% of things Clinton says is false, I'm like, that is actually a lie, because the sample, the pool of things you are drawing a percentage from is not identical.
Yeah, I mean, everybody who works in campaigns has gotten screwed by some sort of fact checking, better or worse. For example, if you vote to prevent something from going up, vote to prevent funding for some program to increase, you can be dinged on voting to cut that program. And a fact checker might say, No, they didn't vote to cut it. They've just prevented this increase. Their funding is staying the same. And, who's right? I mean, you can have an argument on either side. So that's just one.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a zillion other kinds of examples. Like maybe you're just cherry picking. And so cherry picking of data. And I don't know if this is the example for the New York crime statistic, but let's say we're talking about somebody else in a different set of statistics. Like, well, crime went up this one year and that's all they highlighted. But really every other year for the last decade, crime went down. And why they're just highlighting that. So while what they actually said is true, it's not really a good reflection of what happened. So this is the kind of stuff that the fact checkers spend a lot of time working on. And of course, voters, when they hear all this, are like, ugh, I can't be bothered to listen to any of this. Like, you have a set of data, you have a set of data. Who knows? Like, I'm assuming you're all wrong because like, why would I, that's just too complicated. So that can happen a lot with fact checking. But I think the fact checking that people really wanted to happen in the debate, which Lester Holt did, which is to Trump say, I didn't say that, when like a billion people have seen him say something on tape.
Yeah, this is why my favorite thing in the debates from the primaries was Chris Wallace, the second debate that he moderated. He would ask a question and like a Ted Cruz or whoever would try to maneuver their way around it. And he'd be like, bring up chart number 4. And it would be just a chart of, and again, I mean, numbers can be manipulated, but like these were good charts. They were legit. And so instead of him as a moderator having to say like, no, Mr. Senator Cruz, you're wrong. You did actually say this or whatever. Like, wouldn't it have been great if Lester Holt had like had a clip from the Howard Stern interview when Trump is saying, or like had a clip from, when he says the opposite of, and then you can just be like, roll the tape.
Right.
Roll clip number 8.
And that would be cool. On the other hand, people would probably say like, well, why was all this tape? We just want to hear the candidates,
Well, sure. I mean, but I think you can,
yes.
At this point, you can kind of predict what the falsehoods are. That
I think everyone knew the Iraq vote.
Going to come to the table
right,
with.
The birther, right? And there were like 3 or 4.
So you can come ready. And I feel like that's the kind of fact checking that is necessary now that there is and we can talk about this in a second. There's a ton of polling that suggests everybody hates the media. Everybody. And so if you want to get around...
Not us. Hi. We love the media.
Margie, we're in the media. We are in the media. We are in political consulting. We are in polling. We are in... we're basically... What are you talking about? I'm 1 degree short of being like a lawyer or a terrorist. So at any rate, with this declining trust in the media, I mean, you had... I think you had NBC Wall Street Journal last week that showed people think the only thing in their fave list, remember, everybody loved Canada, and then the media was below, Donald Trump below, the political parties below, everything. And then there was a poll, I think that was it Gallup? Now I'm like flipping through our notes to try to figure out where this was.
There was Gallup from a couple weeks ago that showed everyone hated the media and Trump took credit for it, but I don't think I have that here.
There was, it was...
and he was like, patted himself on the back.
Oh, it was a question by Pew, and it was asking, what do you think is responsible for like things going wrong in America? And they tested a whole bunch of different institutions, like the government, religious institutions, etc. And they found that the media was the thing that most people held far more responsible for. Here it is. News media seen by majority as having a negative effect on the nation. 70% think the national news media has a negative effect on the nation, which is more than large corporations. We keep seeing this in polls, even though everybody's like, oh, I hate corporations. They hate the media more. Banks and financial institutions, 50% think that they've been negative, 34% think they've been positive. Colleges and universities, 30% negative, 57% positive. So the news media is like all of these things that sometimes get hated on by conservatives. It is the news media. That's the one thing that everybody agrees. Yeah. 70% of people agree that they think are bad.
Well, no, there was something else.
That's the challenge of the fact checkers. So nobody trusts you.
Yes, right. I know. It's tough. So this is what we're going to talk about now for the rest of the show is, what happens next? Like how do people feel about this country and each other? Like what's the next step after this election is over, which hopefully it'll be soon. I think it's going to be soon.
40-some days?
I hope it's not too far away. I mean, Monmouth released a poll last night, or I saw it last night, showing that like 70% of Americans feel that this election's brought out the worst in us. Mm-hmm. Patrick Murray has been also crushing it, by the way.
Can we give him the Breonna Keeler Award for truth-telling in polls again?
I think so.
3-time recipient.
It's basically, we're going to have to rename it, I'm afraid, because there was a fake polling memo put with his name on it, which...
Oh my God, it was nuts.
And it was like as if it was written by like the fake, not real mouse in my house. Like it made no sense. Like it was so obviously fake. It was
somebody doing a really bad Photoshop job tried to mock up a polling memo that is supposedly from the Monmouth pollsters, and the memo, this fake memo, was like, in recent weeks we've been giving too much hope to those Trump fans, so we need to release a fake poll that will, really boost minority turnout and suppress the white vote. And like it's the sort of fever swamp conspiracy theory stuff.
And people believed it.
So my joke was, gosh, I'm so mad that the media keeps making up this fake stuff to boost Hillary Clinton. So I'm going to make up a fake thing to boost Donald Trump. But it was just so ridiculous. Like, it wasn't even a good fake.
What does that do? I don't even understand.
It was like someone had done like a bad screen grab of like the Monmouth University logo, and like it was...
Yeah.
It was pretty bad.
So, well, meanwhile...
People have lost their damn minds.
I know. I don't even... I mean, I can understand why someone would enjoy putting that together, but how you could believe that that's a real memo just goes to show, again, people have no trust in anybody. Meanwhile, here's, I guess, some good news. Gallup showed that a majority want for their political leaders in Washington to compromise, that it's more important to compromise than to stick to their beliefs. And it seems like that's increased a little bit from 2011 when they started asking it, or at least when the tracking goes back. But it's probably not a surprise that you see Democrats a little bit more open to compromise than Republicans. But still, about half of Republicans say they think it's more important for leaders in Washington to compromise. 56% of Democrats say the same. That 48% of Republicans, that's more than in 2013 and 2014. Actually, fewer Democrats actually want compromise than earlier. So I don't know what to make of that, but I guess parties are maybe meeting in the middle. But I suppose that's good news that after the election, people want to see compromise. Some less good news is how people feel the presidencies of Trump and Clinton would be. So, although I guess these numbers have improved a little bit for Clinton and not changed for Trump. So this is also from Gallup. So about a third of Americans say that they think a Clinton presidency would be great or good. 39% say it would be poor or terrible. For Trump, those numbers are 25 and 51. So a quarter think a Trump presidency would be great or good, and half, 51%, think it would be poor or terrible. And that is basically unchanged since May. Clinton's numbers actually have improved just a little bit since May, not overwhelmingly, but Trump's numbers are basically identical. Well, and that's not very...
And people seem really unexcited about this election just generally. I mean, Gallup did a study where they've been asking over the last couple of elections, how likely do you think you are to vote on a scale of 1 to 10? And of course, people lie and they overestimate. They don't lie. Lying implies that they're
aspirational.
Misleading. They are incorrectly assessing their own likelihood to vote, overestimating their own likelihood to vote. So we know that that's the case, but it's really interesting that over the last 5 presidential elections, this one, 2012, 2008, 2004, 2000, Gallup is asked on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely do you think you are to vote? And this is the lowest assessment, the lowest percentage of people giving on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm definitely going to vote. The highest percentage of people putting themselves in the 1 to 7 bucket, which if you only give yourself a 7 or a 6 or a 5 on the 1 to 10 scale, you're actually probably not going to vote.
Right.
Then they said, how much thought have you given to the upcoming presidential election? People have given more thought to this election than they did in September of 2000, but it's the lowest since then. So lower than September 04, September 08, September 2012. So a lot of people are just kind of checked out of this election entirely.
Oh, well... Yeah, no, I mean, I'm worried about this. So this is, I hope we're going to see more questions about this as we continue through the end. So it's not just horse race, back and forth, but what happens next? Do people feel like they're going to be able to live with the results? That's a question that we should be thinking about. Are people going to be able to come together after feeling like they have to unfriend their family members on Facebook, all that kind of stuff. Like, I just don't know. We don't have a lot. We have some polling on that. But we don't have that much polling on that. But I think that's something that is going to be important to track and think about, because that's going to be the next challenge once we make it to November. So let's just go right to the funny
fun
stuff. Yeah.
Let's get out of the depressing.
Yeah, we'll save. I did an interview with Maura Aarons-Melly, who has a podcast for Fortune called Hiding in the Bathroom. It's about like women's empowerment, like, times where you've like hid in the bathroom if you're like at a work meeting. But anyway, we were just talking about the polling and politics. And she's like, I like how you end with funny stuff. And I said, well, that's just so people leave like on a good note, if they're not, we send them on their way, not feeling depressed about America, but instead thinking about Brangelina. So we have two funny things. People are asking us what we're going to talk about after the election. There's going to be plenty of stuff. One thing is going to be, for example, like fun with data. So there was an article in the Post about this like data dude who comes up with answers all kinds of fun questions. And so one of them was, does living near a Starbucks increase your home's value? The answer, no. And then the other one,
bummer.
I know, right? But although we just had a new Starbucks into Tacoma Park, so I guess it's good that it doesn't increase value or something. I don't know how I feel about it.
This podcast is not sponsored by Starbucks, but can I take a moment to talk about how happy I am that they now have chili mochas? You can get a spicy mocha.
Oh, do they? Oh,
my two favorite things in the world are cafe mochas and spicy foods.
Oh, that does sound good, actually.
My two favorite things.
Well, last year we did talk about pumpkin spice lattes, so now we can find some data about chili.
This is so vastly superior to pumpkin spice lattes.
Agreed.
I can't even
agree.
Put words
I
on
agree.
it.
I'm open to that. Okay, and then do grilled cheese lovers have better sex? I don't know who paid for that study. Anyway, the answer to that is no.
I feel like we actually talked about that study on this show.
Maybe we did.
Because it was one of those things that we posted on Facebook a couple months ago and people went nuts over, and so we threw it in as a mention.
Recurring secret guest, John Johnson.
No, he's debunking some of the stuff that we talk about in this very segment.
Excellent.
No. Don't take away our fun.
I know, right? Grilled cheese, you can still eat it, guys. It's okay. So anyway, but then The Simpsons, there was something at Reddit that got passed around, and they did a tally of every supporting cast member on The Simpsons, the number of words spoken. And you can't see the color coding in the script so well, but they did color coding by gender. And lo and behold, there weren't a lot of ladies at the top. Top was Mr. Burns.
There just weren't a lot of ladies in general.
I mean, I didn't realize this
Most
until
of
now.
the supporting characters on The Simpsons are men.
I usually have a pretty good eye to where I feel women are underrepresented in the Bechdel test and all that fun stuff. I feel like I have I'm not overly sensitive. I feel like I pay pretty close attention, and I guess I'm surprised. But not only are there not a lot of women, that there's no woman in the top 10. You got to go a little bit deeper to see Mrs. Crabapple is on par with Carl. Not Lenny,
Higher
of course.
than Sideshow Bob.
Higher than Sideshow Bob. Well, that's good, because Sideshow Bob is a little creepy. But Carl, Carl's not the talkative one of Carl and Lenny, and Mrs. Crabapple is on par with Carl. So just to give you some sense of where everybody stacks up. Although
Selma has more words than Patty.
Yeah.
Of the women.
Yeah.
But yeah, Mr. Burns, far and away. Mr. Burns, Moe, Seymour Skinner, Ned Flanders, Krusty the Clown, top 5. Grandpa Simpson, 6. So, that all makes perfect sense to me. By the way, speaking of the Bechdel test, I don't actually think Hamilton passes the Bechdel test. I was thinking about this I don't know why I was thinking about this the other day. For some reason, I was just thinking about, there are some cool female characters in Hamilton.
Right.
Eliza, who is Alexander Hamilton's wife. She's a well-developed, cool character. Angelica is an awesome character who's Alexander Hamilton's sister-in-law / kind of maybe love interest.
Right.
It's kind of a sketchy situation.
Right.
Very, very interesting. But I was trying to think, do Angelica and Eliza have a conversation about something that is not Alexander Hamilton? And I don't think that they do.
It's probably a little tougher to do in a musical because you just don't have as many.
Because they do have a song where they're going
Your words are a little bit more economical.
They're going into the city to watch the revolution begin to unfold. But Angelica's really I'm looking for a mind at work. She's looking for a guy who's smart. So I don't know that it actually passes the test.
Uh-oh.
We'll probably get a lot of reader feedback about this. from those Hamilton fans who love Hillary Clinton. Come on, guys.
And Morning Joe.
Help us sort this out.
Their Twitter profiles likes Hamilton, Hillary Clinton, Morning Joe, and Kristen Soltis Anderson.
I don't know. I don't know what that Venn diagram looks like. I'd probably know the three people that meet that. But no, the other thing, by the way, that I wanted to add into our survey was, so we asked Morning Joe, we asked Hamilton. I wanted to ask, have you been on an Acela train?
Oh, that's good.
In the last 6 months. But Patrick Ruffini, my business partner, he sort of waved me off of it because he was like, no, then you're not actually counting elites from the other coast. So we did not include the Acela question.
Fair enough.
Face.
Well, I was listening. So remember, we had on somebody from the Intelligence Squared podcast, and they were talking about fixing the debates. And I meant to check in with them to see what they thought of how this last debate went. But they had a recent debate where they had a bunch of Republicans on, including Ben, whose last name I can't remember how to pronounce, from the Federalist radio show.
Ben Domenech.
Yes, who we went on, and a variety of other folks that I'm sure are all your buddies, all talking about, are the elites responsible for Donald Trump? Now, they didn't say elite Republicans. They were just the elites. And so then you could kind of cast a wider net to everybody, which is what one person did in their argument against that motion. Elites are not responsible. It's for example, let me ask people in this audience, raise your hand if you've been to Europe in the last 5 years. And everybody raised their hand. They're like, okay, I have another question. Generally speaking, is Sancerre a white or a red? And everyone's like, white, obviously. And he's like, okay, you're the elite, everybody. Guess what? Do you feel responsible for Donald Trump? And everyone's breaks into laughter. So anyway, it's pretty funny. Folks want to check it out. It was, I think, entertaining. But it was not from it's not when we had Benji and Leanne talk about Republicans and their view of sort of post-Trump and thoughts towards Trump. It was, people were kind of pointing the finger at sort of everybody elite-wise.
I think it was Ben Domenech and Tim Carney.
Yes.
From the
that's right.
He writes with me at the Examiner.
Yes, that's right.
I think they were team. Yes, elites.
With Jennifer Rubin and somebody from the Wall Street Journal whose name I should know that I don't.
Brett Stevens.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it was good. It was very interesting. So folks should take a listen to it because it was entertaining. So anyway, key findings. Did you have poll denialism on your debate bingo card? We will next time for sure. And everyone get your transition team ready, not for the next president, but for the rest of America. And never mind interrupting or mansplaining during the debate. What has been happening with The Simpsons? We had no idea. Maybe Homestar Runner is better on this dimension.
You can find us on Twitter at The Pollsters, or individually at Margie Omero and at K. Soltis Anderson. You can find us at www.thepollsters.com, our beautiful new website that has links to all of the polls that we've talked about on this show, as well as links to all of the big major pollsters that you'll want to get data from. Make sure you follow us on Facebook, where you can see links to polls we might be talking about in the upcoming show. And also make sure you like the ABC News This Week page, where Margie and I will hopefully over the next few weeks be doing some Facebook Live segments every Monday. And make sure you subscribe to us on your favorite podcast platform, which now can include Spotify.
Right. And sign up for our email list, and we won't contact you very often. We might not contact you at all. Okay, thanks. Take care.